Hello everybody, welcome back to A History of 78s. Well, I promised that in this episode I would explain to you exactly how the very precise standard speed for 78 recordings was established. So let's do that right away, shall we? You're going to need your calculator for this, because it starts with the standard motor speed of 3,600 revolutions per minute. I'm pretty sure that 3,600 is a function of 60 cycle electricity, but I wouldn't bet my life on it. In any case, 3,600 RPM motors were the standard, but of course that was way too fast because that would have been a 10-second recording. So what they needed to do was gear down that speed to get to a proper speed for a record. And they did that, with the gears, and the number of teeth in a gear would determine how much that slowed down. Of course, a 3,600 RPM motor was fairly easy to maintain a consistent speed, and so if you geared that consistently as well, you could get a fairly consistent recording and playback speed on a record. So let's do the math. 3,600 RPM motor. And if you put used a 46 tooth gear, you divide 3,600 by 46, and you get 78.26. That is the precise standard speed of a 78 record. Okay? So now you know that, don't you? Here's the thing about 78s. 78s were not issued in fancy jackets with covers and all kinds of explanations and a thank you from the artist for buying the record and all the stuff that we have seen over the years on those jackets. They were issued in brown paper sleeves. The only information you got about 78 was what was on the actual label, and I bet you won't be able to see this either. It's some lighting problems. This one is one I'm actually going to play for you now. It's called Trovatore Anvil Chorus. It's by Arthur Pryor's band. I've heard of Arthur Pryor's band. Very well-known band. The list of discs that they've recorded over the years was many screens long. I was searching for the title of this in that, and I searched and I was only halfway through, and I finally got mad, and I went instead to something which I find very useful: the discography of American historical recordings. So let me show you. Let's look at what we know about this recording. It's Victor number 19879, and that's on the label. Black label, popular. 10-inch double-faced. That's a historical, discography description. But there are obviously two sides. Side B, actually, is Forge in the Forest, and I'll play that at the end of this episode for you. Side A was the Anvil Chorus. Why they put Trovatore at the beginning of that, I'm not sure. Here's what's interesting. Look at this. Side B, Forge in the Forest, they used take number 11. Side A, they used take number 5. Why so many takes? Well, understand that in the early days of recordings, eventually they had one microphone to record an entire band. What you played was what you got on the recording. There was no editing. There was no separate tracks. It was all one sound in the room together at one time. The chances of everybody doing that perfectly in a band every single time are slim to none, and slim is out of town. So yeah, 5 takes, 11 takes. Can you imagine 16 times they played 2 different songs in order to get one record recorded? That's kind of a hard day's work. This was recorded in 1926. I'm sorry, it says it was recorded November 17th, 1925, and released in 1926. I would imagine that to get a band together in the studio, you spent several days, if not a week, recording several different discs. And then you went out on the road for a while and played live gigs and said, hey, we have a new recording coming out, watch for that, and be sure to buy it. Like they do. It says the delete cutout date was November 1950. I'm not sure what that refers to. If they only kept them available to buy for 25 years maximum, or whether the 1950s was just 78s were done and they were taking them out of rotation. But in any case, let's listen to, for some reason, Trovatore, Anvil Chorus, with the Arthur Pryor's Band from November 17th, 1925, Take 5. Thank you, Arthur Pryor and the boys. Just a little bit of Lawrence Welk reference there. I could say that in a thicker Scandinavian accent, but I won't do that to you. Well, one of the other interesting aspects of 78s, and as I said, the term 78 didn't come into use until after World War II, when it was necessary to distinguish 78 recordings from other newer disc record formats. Before that, they were just records, or in the earlier days, they had to distinguish them from cylinder recordings that went this way, and they were then referred to as disc records or discs. The term disc jockey comes from somebody riding the gain on discs. Riding the gain means controlling the volume level, and they used a VU meter like the one I have on my shirt. VU stands for volume unit. It's a kind of an arbitrary assignment. It's really based on decibels, and that's what the top number is decibels. If you, in the early days of radio, it didn't matter so much, but later on they got fussy. If you were in the red, you were violating FCC rules for the volume, because in AM radio, if your signal was too strong, it would bleed into other frequencies. And some of that still exists in FM radio as well, and even in television. So it's very important for broadcasters to control the volume level, and that's why they needed a VU meter. So disc jockey means riding the gain is another term for volume, of the discs that you're playing. Okay? A little extra trivia along with the history of 78s. Well, I'm running out of time, but the research that I read said that as late as the 1970s, some children's records were released at the 78 RPM speed. I was born in the early 50s, and I never saw a children's 78. We had a little, I think, Disney record player that my siblings and I got to use. And the records, the children's records we got were 7-inch records, the same size as 45s, but they had the small hole on it. 45s have a larger spindle hole. The children's records I had this small hole for the spindle. They were 7 inches, and I'm pretty sure they were played at 33 because you wouldn't have gotten a whole song on anything any faster. They may have been 45s, but I don't believe so. I think they had to use the larger spindle hole on 45s. So I'm pretty sure those were 33s, but we never had 78s to play. In fact, I never really got a chance to work with 78 recordings until I got the collection I'm using for this series. I have a box of 78s that someone gave me that he bought at an auction. And so the recordings you're hearing are pretty much reflect the taste of someone who bought these at some point. I have no idea when. So that's a little background on the recordings I'm actually using. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to close out with Forge in the Forest, side B of the Arthur Pryor Band recording. But before we go to that, I want to let you know that in the next episode we're going to talk about the fact that vinyl records were not always vinyl. They were made of something else initially. And we're going to talk about that and why it changed and when that changed in the next episode. We're also going to hear from the Sundowners Band on a 78 that says Just for Dancing on the label. All that's going to be in the next episode. Right now we're going to close out with Forge in the Forest by the Arthur Pryor Band.
Thank you.